Welcome to the Big O Show on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe.
Still the same damn kid from Oklahoma, same old dreams hanging off my shoulders, wishing and waiting on a shooting star for all to see.
And now your host, straight out of Oklahoma, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostroski.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma.
Welcome in, everybody. It is Thursday night, 8 Eastern Time, 7 Central. That can mean only one thing. It is now time for the Big O Show here on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. We are powered by Believe. AFC Championship game this week. It's time, folks. One game away from the Super Bowl. But first, we take care of business in Arrowhead. And that is Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. That game, obviously, in Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium. Chiefs 2-point favorites. And the over-under is 47.5. But before we get much further, folks, as always, hit the like button, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, tell everybody. Our station's growing, and that's because of you, because of the viewer, the listener. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching our content, joining in the comments section like many will, and just taking it all in, whether it be in live form on YouTube or in podcast form on all major podcast networks. And we appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch, and hit that like and subscribe button. But I don't want to take up any more of your time with that, because it is a very, very huge week this week. Obviously, AFC Championship game. And as we like to always do, before we get to Dr. Brad Bowen and talk about the injury report, we like to get into what Larry Merchant used to call the particulars before a major championship fight on HBO back in the day, when you could watch stuff for free. Well, I say free, you still had to pay the cable fee. But we look at these two teams, both teams undefeated at home. Buffalo 8-0, obviously 10-0 now in the playoffs. Kansas City 9-0 from away from home. Buffalo 5-4, Kansas City 7-2. If you look at these two teams, points scored per game, Buffalo comes in second in the league, 30.9 points per game. Kansas City, 22.6 points per game. That's good enough for 15th place in the NFL. And you look at points allowed, Buffalo gives up 21.6 points per game. That's 11th. Kansas City gives up 19.2. That's 4th. And you look at the takeaway differential, obviously the king of the hill, the Buffalo Bills, plus 24 on the turnover differential. Kansas City, not too bad, plus 6. They come in 10th. Passing yards, folks, Buffalo, 227 yards per game. That's 9th. I think that's pretty damn good, considering some of the things we're going to talk about later in the show that revolve around taking the governor off of Josh Allen. Then Kansas City comes in. They are 222 yards per game. That's 14th. Rushing yards, Bills, 131. Good enough for 9th. Kansas City, 105, 22nd in the league. Defensive passing yards allowed, the Bills giving up 226 a game. That's 24th. Kansas City, 218, not far behind. That's good enough for 18th in the league. Defensive rushing yards per game, Buffalo gives up 115. That's 12th. And Kansas City gives up 101. That's 8th. That's 3 weeks in a row we hit the playoffs. And we are facing teams that are very, very good against the run. Denver at the time was 3. We all know about Baltimore last week, who was 1 rather. And now we're looking at the 8th-ranked team. It's still a top 10 team. Obviously, running the football will be a tall task once again. But we'll talk about that because we have a solution for it. And it's a large solution, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But as we like to do here on the Big O Show, we like to always have our man, Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. And let's see what Brad's got going on, man. What's going on, Brad?
Happy to be back, Jerry. Another week.
Hey, man, have you dug out of all the snow up there? I know you guys have been getting hammered lately.
Still working on it. We probably got a foot at my house. I think Joe Miller probably has about another foot on top of that. So everyone's getting dug out. Still pretty icy cold, but so is the rest of the country, it sounds like.
Right. Joe kind of lives in the hub of the lake effect out there. I won't give away the town he lives in for all the groupies that want to show up at his front yard, but he definitely gets hit quite a bit with the lake effect snow. Obviously, Thursday injury report comes out. We're going to talk about some guys. Obviously, the main guy to talk about did not participate today, Taylor Rapp. Kind of your thoughts on it. Hip injury, maybe go a little bit over the mechanism of what might have happened in the game last week and what led to this injury.
Yeah, so they're designating him as a right hip. When he was going into the tackle, he also got hit by DeMar Hamlin too. His right foot was kind of in front of him. He was leaning forward, and as he flexed forward, his leg also kind of got driven in towards his midline. So think knee in going across the body, which tends to be more of like a hip impingement position. It's how an orthopedic surgeon or a PT would test to see if you had any labral or hip pathology on the front side there. It's also how you tend to, one of the ways that you can hurt it. So right now I'm kind of thinking that Rapp is dealing with a potential labral tear at this point. It's not good in my eyes that he's a DNP for today's practice. I was hopeful that maybe we'd see him out there at least a little bit in a limited fashion. The fact that he's not out tells me that he's probably in a pretty good amount of pain and they're holding him off. Doesn't give me high hopes for the rest of the season, but I'm always a positive person, so maybe something changes here soon.
Right, exactly. And just, our listeners, our viewers, just, as you talk about it, and you heard Dr. Bowen say labrum, the shoulder and the hip are very similar. Shoulder a lot more free moving than the hip, but they do both have labrums in them, and you can tear those. Obviously, we're speculating Rapp is dealing with that. Sometimes that labrum tear gets into the joint, and you almost get a pincher effect where that head of the femur will pinch that labrum that's torn. Also, you get some other stuff as well, some looseness and different things. Hip PT, is this something you get on crutches and get off of it a while, or are you more trying to keep mobility and all those things? How do you deal with something like this?
Always depends on severity. So if you get someone who can weight bear coming in and they're getting pinching in end ranges of position, so like Rapp had, he flexed his hip really hard. If you have someone that's pinching in that flex position, you can work through mobilization, stretches, try to get soft tissue work going on to feed some slack into that joint, if you will, and get some of that motion back, free it up so it's not getting pinched quite as hard, or you get more motion before it does get pinched. In the case where it flaps into the joint, though, that typically becomes no longer a PT problem. You're looking at a guy like you with an orthopedic surgeon in surgery for that.
Exactly. Full disclosure, what I do for a living, we do a lot of hip labrum repairs. But moving on from Taylor Rapp, we move on to, if you're going to have to absorb Rapp's injury, I guess you can say we've dealt with it. Another one we've dealt with but don't want to deal with is Matt Milano. Milano, at the end of the game, I think the last 2 to 3 plays of the game, was pulled off the field. Seems that he's aggravated, maybe a hamstring. He was limited today, a guy that has history of hamstring injuries. Kind of your thoughts on that, and then two-part question, Dr. Bowen, what I want to get into, is there a way to accelerate treatment on something like this, especially a guy that seems to be chronic throughout his career?
All right. So first part of that question. Yeah, he got pulled off the field. Supposedly, coming out in the media, they said he had tightness. Well, tightness to me is a pretty good precursor to an injury about to happen. Anyone that's pulled or strained a muscle like that from exerting themselves will tend to say something like that before you have a big injury. So tightness to me is not a good thing. They got him off the field quick enough, so he didn't officially tear or rupture anything, which is good. So they're going to spend this week trying to rehab him. The rehab techniques are getting a little bit more advanced as far as starting to speed this stuff up. You got blood flow restriction therapy. You've got hyperbaric chambers that can help that stuff out. They typically what was the treadmill one that you mentioned last time?
Yeah, they have that in Buffalo. They got a altitude training.
Yep, they had altitude training. So this high-tech type of therapy stuff that they have can help to accelerate that. It can keep him moving as an athlete, pain-free, getting blood into that tissue to heal without stressing him enough that he's going to have risk of an injury while he's going through that type of rehab. He was limited, so he's moving around. Based on what I saw, he was moving around pretty well, so I'm happy to see that. Anytime you have a tightness, as we'll call it, it's likely to come back, though. So fingers crossed he doesn't experience that, or we don't see him get pulled off the field on Sunday, because if he gets some tightness again, I have less hope that he will return during the game.
You know, Brad, and so I don't know if you utilize any of these techniques or not in your practice, but I know one thing that a lot of people do nowadays is what's called active release. And, you know, as a muscle heals, things are torn, it heals, it could possibly scar. Active release gets things back in line and tends to get those muscle fibers aligned. What is your feelings on that? Is that something that he could be doing, or they could be doing to him to maybe possibly get him back sooner? And is that a good idea?
Yeah, that falls into some great soft tissue techniques. Some people hear ART, they hear Graston. There's different ways to kind of get that tissue moving a little bit better again. ART is a technique where you're basically pushing into that muscle belly and then creating length at the same time through movement. Tends to be a good way to get a muscle that doesn't feel all that great back to its normal length, moving the way it should, and keeping that tissue from scarring down to the point where it becomes a problem. All tissue that has a strain scars down. You need that to happen, but then it has to kind of remodel and get back to its normal length and tissue look.
We'll talk about two guys, but last main guy from the game before, and obviously Taron Johnson shows up on the injury report, limited today. He was full Wednesday, neck, shoulder, might have slept on it wrong. We know that, not a huge guy playing up inside with the big guys. We saw the hit he took the game before. Maybe slept on a wrong, little neck and shoulder soreness, nothing to be too concerned about.
Yes and no. So he was spotted with a sleeve on his left shoulder. So kind of one of those compression sleeves that pull that shoulder back into the joint. Yeah. I don't think that was seen on Wednesday, but it was today. So with a sleeve like that, trying to compress the shoulder back in the joint, it kind of makes me think that, like we had said in the Discord channel, potential subluxation, where that shoulder may have kind of pops part of the way out of the joint and then back in. And maybe that bothered him when he was going through drills on Wednesday. So they said, we're going to fit you up with a sleeve, see how it feels on Thursday when you're moving around. And again, he looked pretty good too. I would pay attention to him though as he moves into Sunday.
Brad, explain to the listeners what the sleeve does. I'm familiar with them, but you being the expert, kind of let our listeners in on what that sleeve does for him and how that allows guys to go in and play with an acute or even a chronic labrum injury in the shoulder.
Yeah, so the shoulder is always likened to a golf ball on a tee. So the tee being that cartilaginous ring or labrum that we were talking about with both in the hip and the shoulder. When you create some pressure into the joint like that, it makes it inherently more stable. When you sublux a joint, it makes it inherently less stable. So the idea of that sleeve is to overcome the injury that he had on Sunday to allow him to feel a little bit better and move a little bit better with less discomfort. The more that shoulder moves out of the joint again, the more likely he is to turn a subluxation into a dislocation and also have more chronic issues throughout the rest of the season or in the future too.
So not only support, but you're limiting range of motion to where they can't get into positions that could possibly cause that subluxation.
You can. I didn't see exactly what sleeve he had on. I thought he might have had just one of those neoprene ones that kind of pulled it into the joint, but they do have limiting straps.
Right.
The picture that I saw was taken from behind. So if we can get some more info and see what the front side looks like, they may be trying to limit extension or abduction a little bit out to the side to make sure that he doesn't sublux again.
Last player to talk about, Christian Benford, concussion. He was limited today, was limited yesterday, but he was in a red jersey. Seems to be in stage 4 of concussion protocol. Fingers crossed, things look pretty good for him.
I was pretty positive about Ray Davis last week, just the way the end of the season stuff kind of goes. You tend to see people get on the field a little bit faster, whether that's for better or for worse. I think we're seeing the same thing with Benford. Obviously, he had a concussion after that big play to essentially end the game. The fact that he's basically in stage 4 now because he's out there moving around the field tells me that he'll probably clear potentially by tomorrow.
Awesome. Hey, Brad, real quick, let our listeners know if they want to come see you, get something worked on as far as injury goes, even injury prevention in sport. Those are all things that you do there at Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. How can our listeners and viewers get in contact with if they want to come see you and get some help?
Absolutely. The number to call is 716-341-9694, or you can find my website at drivenptperformance.com.
He is Dr. Brad Bowen, and hopefully we will have one more episode, a Super Bowl episode. So
I'm excited for that one.
Thanks for coming on, Dr. Bowen, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Jerry. Go Bills.
He's Dr. Brad Bowen, Driven Physical Therapy and Performance, and we are lucky enough to have him here on the Big O Show every week on Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. Again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Great knowledge by Brad. It was he's able to describe those things in layman's terms so everybody can understand them and see what these guys are going through and just what it takes to get back on the field. I mean, this time of year is not the time to be in the tub, man. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to get on the field. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's beat up. And we appreciate Dr. Bowen coming in and explaining these injury situations to us and just what this Bills training staff is doing to get these guys ready to play on Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central in Arrowhead in Kansas City. And I'm kind of feeling nostalgic today, folks. So as we talked about earlier, as Larry Merchant would say, the particulars – we're going to go ahead and we're going to do another little Larry Merchant deal. We're going to talk about the tail of the tape. Before we get into my 5 keys of the game, kind of want to talk about both of these quarterbacks. We seem to have gotten into a world that we live in that we're constantly comparing and contrasting players, everything else. And I don't know, Bills Mafia, if there's a more polarizing figure in the league right now than number 17. There are no gray areas, it seems like, with number 17. You either love him or you hate him. Obviously, we love him. We are very, very glad that he's ours, and we're excited that he's here. But I wanted to compare and contrast a little bit of Patrick Mahomes and also Josh Allen just to kind of talk about some things as far as what these guys do. So this season, Patrick Mahomes, he's had 581 pass attempts, 3,928 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Rushing, we talk about him running the ball. Not really his thing. Is he elusive? Yes. Is he hard to get on the ground? Yes. Can he extend plays? Yes. Is he a huge runner? Not really. Design runs this year for Patrick Mahomes, 58. He had minus 26 yards in those 58 rushes. He's had 37 scramble opportunities for 333 yards. That's where he is deadly. He is deadly when it comes to scrambling and finding that open avenue and staying on his feet and being able to elude the rush. So he's had, like I said, 37 scrambles, 333 scramble yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. 2 stats to tie into this game when we talk about Mahomes before we get into Josh Allen. First statistic is this. Mahomes ranks 3rd in attempts per game. He ranks 3rd in attempts per game. So when you look at this Bills defense that ranks 3rd in receptions allowed, you would think that would be a big opportunity for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's something that the Bills are going to have to be cognizant of. We'll talk about that in our 5 keys of the game. But like I said, Mahomes 3rd in pass attempts. Bills rank 3rd in receptions allowed. Could be an area of strength for Kansas City going into this game. Second thing is this. Mahomes is the 8th best quarterback in the NFL against 2 high coverage looks. What is 2 high coverage? If you're a Bills fan, you know exactly what 2 high coverage is. It's cover 2 high safeties. So when you look at this, Mahomes, 8th best quarterback against 2 high coverage. And the Bills defense is 4th in running 2 high coverage. Amazing to me that there's actually 3 other teams out there that run 2 high or cover 2 more than we do, but there are. So you'd have to think that Mahomes is licking his chops there. And of course, we all know who the cover 2 killer is, and that is one Travis Kelce. So a couple areas of strength for Mahomes and some of the numbers. When we move on to Josh Allen, the particulars for Josh Allen. 483 pass attempts, quite a few less than Mahomes, 3,731 yards, 29 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. When you look at Josh rushing the football, 102 designed runs, okay? 149 yards on those runs. He had 42 scrambles for 382 yards on those scrambles, 12 rushing touchdowns. An absolute wagon when it comes to running the football at the quarterback position. You think about this guy. I watched somebody had on some combine film when he was at the combine, just shy of 6'5", 240-some pounds. I think he ran a 4.7. Just an absolute wagon running the football at that position, and he also throws the ball pretty well too. A couple of things that I said that kind of facetiously. Yes, we know he throws the football well. A couple of things that to look for in this game on Sunday. When you look at Allen, he's 7th in the NFL versus man coverage. Kansas City ranks 10th in the league in running man coverage. So there's going to be some opportunities for him against man coverage. Now, that happens to be because Kansas City does like the blitz. Okay, Spagnuolo likes to bring the blitz. He likes to bring extra guys. All right, Kansas City ranks 8th in pressure rate, more likely causing Allen to scramble more and give him more scramble opportunities, which you saw in that first game. Josh has 406 scramble yards, which ranks him 3rd in the NFL. So, strengths against strengths, and you got them on both sides. So those are the tail of the tape between these two quarterbacks, and I didn't want to get into Haley and Taylor. So you can do that on another show. But as we move along, again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It's time for our 5 keys of the game for this AFC Championship game Sunday night in Arrowhead. Man, it's exciting, and I think this is when I look at this thing and I kind of try to break it down, I think it's going to be an epic game. I really do. I'm excited already. Like, I'm kind of stumbling on my words a little bit tonight because I'm excited about it. I'm amped up. I'm ready to watch this football game. One step away from the Super Bowl. But first, we take care of business. And here's my 5 keys to the game. And I kind of did some play on words and some funny stuff, trying to bring things down. Like I said, I'm so amped up. I'm trying to ease into this thing. But when you look at Buffalo, there's a fine line between 5-man pressures and blitzes and cage and contain rush. And I think you saw that last week against Baltimore. And when I say that with the fact of how do we pressure Mahomes? When you look at Patrick Mahomes, like we talked about, he has that elusiveness. He's good at finding openings. He's good at finding the open receiver. We all know Travis Kelce and his success rates with doing that. How do we rush Mahomes? I don't know if he has the home run escapability that Lamar has. So one of the things you'll hear defensive coordinators, defensive coaches talk about when they are talking about things like blitzing and talking about high pressure packages or things like that, or press man where maybe nobody's in center field, they'll make the comment, if he gets out, can we get him on the ground? Meaning, if this guy gets out, are we good enough, or is he not fast enough, or whatever, to get him on the ground and tackle him, or is he just a home run hitter, and if he gets out, he's touching the pad on the goalpost, and there's not much we can do about it. If you watch the way the Bills rushed the quarterback last week in Lamar Jackson, they felt that he was going to go touch the goalpost. Was going to do it. So they ran a lot of contain rush. They call it cage rushing. That last drive of the game, which looked like it was so easy to go down the field, they just contained Lamar. Weren't going to let him out. And it wasn't like there was a ton of crazy routes being run. It's hard for a quarterback to cover people for 10 seconds. And, some people, the naysayers or the people that always have something, they can say, that's their job, cover them. It's not that easy. So they've got to figure out what they're going to do with Patrick Mahomes. They got to get to him. They got to rush him. Obviously, if you get to him, just kind of pat him. Just pat him. If you hit him too hard, there'll probably be a flag. But they've got to disrupt him. They got to get him moving around. They got to do some things. They got to get to him. But how do they do it? Do they do it through 5-man pressures again, which I think you'll see him get into that 5-man pressure game? Hopefully they don't contain rush as much or cage rush as much because it gives him way too much time, and he's a killer back there, man. I mean, you just can't do it. the guy's a killer. Lamar's got passing ability, but he's more of an all-around kill. You look at Patrick Mahomes, he will slice you up. So you've got to get to him. You got to mess with him, but you got to do it in a way where you can't sit there and just contain rush. So how do we get to Patrick Mahomes? They got to get to him. Obviously, D-line's part of that, but I think your 5-man pressures and some of those things are going to be well, and then that also gives us a chance to play some man. So that's my first key to the game. The style in which we pressure Mahomes. Second, the 1,909-pound solution. What is the 1,909-pound solution? Well, that solution is Brown, Torrance, McGovern, Edwards, and Deion Dawkins. We have got to continue to run the ball. I truly believe that nobody in the NFL runs the ball schematically as well as the Buffalo Bills. And when I say schematically, that means the way the blocking schemes are, the way the plays are called, the way things are drawn up, and then the guys use their athletic ability and their techniques that they learn from Aaron Cromer, and they take control. Right now, this Buffalo run game is a wagon. They're taking care of things. And I think the biggest thing is, folks, before I get to my third key, which kind of is a little bit contradictory of what we're talking about right now, when I look at this run game, I truly believe it has become an extension of the Buffalo Bills defense. We talked about it on Tuesday night with Anna Bonini and Sal Mariana. I mean, Sal brought it up. When I asked him that question, he said Joe Brady basically said that in the press conference. We are very cognizant of controlling the football, keeping the other team off the field. It's become an extension of the defense, the time of possession game and all of that. And if you look at the last 2 weeks and you look at Denver, and Denver comes in, and Denver's the third-ranked team in the league as far as least yards rushing, and they smash them. And then big bad Baltimore comes in, and they got all these huge dudes inside, and we're not going to be able to move them, and we smash them. You'd have to think that the same thing's going to take place this week. Bills got to establish the run. Kansas City, they're 8th in the league at 101 yards a game. We faced 80 yards a game last week, 96 yards a game the week before it. Bring it. Bring Stone Cold Jones. Bring Karlaftis. Bring it. If you're not watching Spencer Brown and going, my goodness, this dude is an absolute animal, is a freak, then you're not watching offensive line play, or you probably don't know what you're looking at. Spencer Brown playing at a level that's the fact that he's not on the All-Pro team is amazing. I mean, I don't know what to say about them. I mean, they're playing that well. So, again, my second key to the game is the 1,909-pound solution. That's our offensive line against Kansas City's front. Got to continue to rush the rock for many, many reasons that I just gave. My third key to the game, as my man Meatloaf used to sing, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Well, this time, 2 out of 3 all the time is bad. And what I'm alluding to is this. We talked about it on the post-game show. We talked about it a little bit on Tuesday night on the beat. Josh Allen's got to be more involved in this game plan. And I think that obviously it goes week to week. Lately, though, it's been, run first all the time, and I think you'll still see some of that. But the way Kansas City plays with their pressures from Spagnuolo and stuff, Josh is going to have a chance to get out and do some running and different things. But we need Josh to be more involved in this offense. I want to see more balls downfield. I want to see more passes downfield. When I look at this thing and I look at Josh, he's first in the NFL in big-time throws. Big-time throws are like the throw to Johnson in the back of the end zone a few weeks ago. Big-time, big play throws. 37 of them. He's first in the league. Here's the other thing. Turnover-worthy throws, he's only had 15 of those. That's 57th in the NFL. Because when they talk about stats, they do backup quarterbacks, receivers that throw the ball, running backs. So that's 57. Unbelievable arm talent. His ability to protect the football this year is through the roof. Now, I will say this. In that game against Baltimore, first play of the game, Matt Collins down the sidelines wide open. He's got to get hit. Now, he did hit Shakir later to make up for it, but when you got plays that are open, you got to hit them. That play and then also the throw to Kincaid, both of those were poor throws. So when you do get a chance to get your shot downfield, you got to do it. You should be able to get some this week with the receivers. They play a ton of man. Don't know how much they're going to bracket. Like I said, we'll find out with Spagnuolo. They do a bunch of pressure stuff. Almost think that maybe he might not pressure quite as much because he knows, like we talked about on the first one, how are we going to pressure Mahomes? Are we going to sit back and be passive or come and get him? I think they do know if they try to go get Josh, he's might be the best or is the best quarterback against blitz in the league. And that'll hurt him. So that's my third key to the game. 2 out of 3 all the time is bad. I need to see Josh more with the football in his hands, making stuff in the throwing game, but in the passing game. But I do understand it. If all of a sudden we have a game like we did before and we're just running the rock at will, keep Patty and the boys on the sidelines. We'll worry about that later. Keys to the game number 4, Brown, Pacheco, and Kelsey. Oh my! When I look at this game, we beat them at home. They didn't have Hollywood Brown. They didn't have Isaiah Pacheco. 2 more weapons to go with Kelsey, who played, but Kelsey all of a sudden has shown up in the playoffs. We have to figure out the best way to take care of these guys. Obviously, Pacheco, the running back, he's tremendously good out of the backfield. I think Pacheco is a key piece of what they do. I know they've got Hunt and all that. I love Pacheco. He runs extremely hard. I'm just telling you, we've got to figure out how to control him, and because he does a good job catching the ball out of the backfield as well. Figure out what to do against Travis Kelce in cover 2. He's a cover 2 killer. Talked about it earlier, and that goes along the lines of he ad libs. If we're sitting back there letting him pat the football and contain rush and all that, Mahomes is going to have a chance to make a lot of plays. The other thing about this is, and I haven't really dug too deep into this, but it's an idea that I was thinking about. Is this a game where we leave Johnson on Kelsey? If we bring a 5-man, is he the guy that plays man-to-man with Kelsey, or is Kelsey a big enough threat to where we even talk about maybe rolling a dime cornerback on him, where the Bills go into their 3-man look with the dime package, and we can rush off of that, do some blitzing, but then we can match up corner to the tight end. So that's another thing to look at of how to handle these guys. Hollywood Brown, straight burner. We're going to have to make sure we stay over the top of him, something our safeties have not done very well as of late. We've given up some plays over the top, especially because we're playing cover 3. You'll see that cornerback play outside leverage. That receiver runs inside. That corner's expecting safety over the top. If he's peeking his head in the backfield, we're not deep enough. We get beat on touchdowns. Happened against Denver. Happened against really didn't happen against – I think maybe it wasn't a touchdown, but it happens against Baltimore. But that was more along the lines of letting him scramble too long and finding a guy that's open. But we've got to figure out a way to deal with this. So those are my fourth key to the game, Brown, Pacheco, and Kelsey. How do we control those cats? Because they've got more talent on offense this time around than we played them in the regular season. And my 5th key to the game, make special teams special again. We've got to be 100% on field goals and PATs. We've got a left-footed kicker in Ariza who we knew for a few minutes. Left-footed kickers kick the ball goofy. I know they brought some people into One Bills Drive this week to make sure that we saw the spin. Just like the ball coming out of the left-handed quarterback's hand, you've got to get used to it. We've got to find a way to limit returns. We've had too many returns. People getting out over the 35-yard line to the 40, 45. We got to limit returns. And if Codrington's back this week, we got to get that punt return going. All right, we got to do a lot of like what we did last week with our PATs and field goals and all that stuff. This is one of those games, man. you don't think about special teams till it bites you. You've got to be 100%. And I'm expecting that this week out of the Buffalo Bills, and I would expect nothing less. So my 5 keys to this AFC Championship game in Kansas City. Number 1, there's a fine line between all-out blitzes and cage and contain rush. How are we going to rush Patrick Mahomes? How are we going to get to him, but also not allow him to be slippery? Like I said, not a home run runner, but he's also a guy that's just irritating with his ability to get away from things. My second key to the game, the 1,909-pound solution, that's the ground game and the offensive line. Got to continue to pound the rock. Got to continue to get after it. Got to continue to get after their defense. Third key to the game, 2 out of 3 all the time is bad. I'm very, very cognizant of the running game that we need it, but Josh Allen has to be involved in this passing game and has to be involved in this offensive game plan more. We've got to use his abilities. I think the way Kansas City plays defense is going to allow Josh Allen to be more active in that game plan, and I think we'll see that on Sunday. My 4th key to the game is Brown, Pacheco, and Kelsey. Pacheco and Brown did not play against us the first game. Kelsey all of a sudden is revived because it's the playoffs. How do we handle those 3? How do we try to take those 3 away or contain them, limit the explosive plays? Because it's coming out there now, folks. You can look at explosive play ratio, okay, plus minus. It's almost as important as turnovers. Bills don't give many explosives, but they also don't get many. So you got to limit the explosive plays, and you got to know how. And that's what I mean by this 4th point is Brown, Pacheco, and Kelsey. You got to limit those guys. And 4th and finally, 5th key is special teams got to be like last week. They got to be great. We got to make all the PATs. We got to make all the field goals when we got them. We got to have good returns by Codrington and the folks. Can't fumble the ball. We got to limit returns. And special teams in games like this have to be perfect. So, folks, once again, thanks for watching the Big O Show here on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Very humbling that you people would take your time and watch these shows and take in the content. We appreciate you as always. And I hopefully, matter of fact, you know what? I'm not going to say hopefully. I'm going to say I know that I will be back here next week as we'll be talking, or in 2 weeks, maybe it's 2 shows, as I'll get a chance to do a breakdown of the Super Bowl game against whoever that may be. So, Bills Mafia, good luck. I know you'll be watching like me, and look forward to talking to you next week about the next one. But as always, folks, thank you. Much love. Go Bills.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma. Same old dreams hanging off my shoulders. Wishing and waiting on a shoe.